Johnny Everhart served in the U.S. Navy during World War II. He was a radio man on the USS Tinsman DE-589 and saw action in the Pacific. All right, tell me your name.
Johnny C. Everhart.
And where are you from?
Here, where was I born?
Yes.
In Blount County.
Okay.
Near the old Chill Highway Church. Back over near on the mountain, practically.
So you were born at a church?
No, I wasn't born in a church.
Oh.
I was born in a log house, I guess.
Log house. Well, good. And where did you go to school?
Well, I went to Prospect Grade School.
Mhm.
I went to Porter High School. And I went to the UT.
Okay. And then after high school, you entered the service.
I went into service. I had my draft notice the day I got home from graduation, the day of graduation.
And when you saw that draft notice, was the World War II already going on?
Yep.
And
Well, I was expecting it.
yes. And where did they tell you to report to?
Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia.
Okay. And once you got there, what happened?
Well, we went through the regular indoctrination, and somewhere along the way, I had a choice and selected the Navy. I don't remember too much about what happened at Fort Oglethorpe, really.
So you selected the Navy, and then did you go to boot camp?
I went to boot camp at Bainbridge, Maryland.
Okay. And how did you get there? By train?
Train.
And what was that journey like?
Well, it was a little tiresome. Most of the travel I did on the train during the war, I stood up. It was so crowded. I mean, every train I was ever on was crowded.
Were you on the train with other military men?
Yeah, the group that selected the Navy, there's several that was on the same train, yes.
Okay. And then you got to boot camp in Maryland. And what was that like?
Well, it wasn't too bad. It's quite a change, I guess, for a country boy. But I didn't feel too bad about boot camp. In fact, I rather enjoyed most of it. It was exciting being away from home because I'd never been away from home. I was strictly a country boy, and so boot camp was quite an experience for me.
Now, after boot camp, did you get assigned to a ship, or what happened after boot camp?
Well, I went to radioman school in Bainbridge, and when I finished there, I applied for radio direction finder school. This was a special thing that they were doing. It's a German anti-submarine procedure. And I went up to Casco Bay, Maine, to radio direction finder school. And I was assigned to a ship. This would have been sometime in, I guess, in 44, early 44.
Okay.
And we went down to Hingham, Massachusetts, and they were building the ship there. The ship was not completed when I was assigned to it. So we stayed there 6-8 weeks, I guess, before the ship was commissioned. So
What was the name of the ship?
Tinsman, the DE-589 Tinsman.
Okay. And you're a plank owner of the Tinsman.
Pardon?
You're the original crew.
I was on the original crew, yes.
Well, good.
Yeah.
What did you think of your ship when you first saw it?
I thought it was going to be a little bit small when I got out in the ocean. It turned out I was right. It was a DE is a fairly small ship, and it's in rough waters. It's rough, but I enjoyed the time on the ship. I met a lot of good people.
So, once your ship got underway for the war, where did they head? The Pacific, or?
Well, of course, on a new ship, you know, the first thing they did was go on a shakedown cruise to Bermuda.
Okay.
During our shakedown cruise, one of our turbines burned out. We had to come back to Hingham, and they had to cut out, and they had literally burned out and lifted that whole turbine out of the ship. We were there, oh goodness, I don't know how long, a couple of months. But we supposedly missed the invasion over there because we were in dry dock.
Okay.
After the ship was repaired, we went to the Pacific, directly to the Pacific, down through Panama and out in the Pacific. So I spent most of my time on the ship was in the Pacific. I don't know. That would have been probably mid-44, somewhere in there.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So you were a radio man.
I was a radio man. We did direction finder work, but in the Pacific, well, the direction finder, the theory behind this and the reason they did it was they found that the German submarines, before they attacked, would always come up and send a message back to Germany. And if enough ships that was equipped with the direction finders would get bearings on these subs, and we sunk a lot of ships by doing that. But I missed most of that because of the time in dry dock. And I went back into the radio group in the Pacific.
Okay. Now, what was your battle station's position on the ship?
It was the lower handling room of the aft 5-inch gun.
Okay. Did you see a lot of action on battle stations?
Well, quite a bit. Most of our action was in the Philippines, in the Philippine area. We participated in 2 or 3 small invasions. It was not anything major. Mm-hmm. We were at our battle stations quite a bit.
Now, I'm looking at the history of your ship, and it's on December 14th of 44. It looks like a kamikaze plane grazed the ship. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
What?
I didn't see it. I was down below.
Did you hear it, or
I heard it.
Did anybody get hurt?
No.
What? Can you tell me a little bit about how that?
Well, I really don't know. As I said, I heard stories, but we were escorting some tugs that were towing octane gasoline for planes into somewhere in the Philippines. And these planes were diving at these high octane barges. And I don't, as I say, they didn't hit one, but I guess they came close to some of them. So I was told. But as far as seeing action, I never saw any action because I was down handling shells.
Right, but your ship was definitely participating.
Yeah. I think one of the most frightening things, though, in the Philippines, the Japanese came up with some kind of a motorboat. It had an old Ford engine in it, and they tied onto the front of this thing a couple of cans of barrels of TNT, and they would hit them at these ships. And we captured 2 or 3 of those. And they sunk a couple of our ships with those things. And they would apparently set the rudder and abandon ship and just hope the thing crashed into one of our ships.
Wow.
I guess that was the most frightening thing I went through.
Did you have a good crew, a good captain?
Yeah, we had a very good captain, a good exec. Well, we had a bunch of good people.
How was the food on the ship?
Well, most of the time it was pretty good, but out in the Pacific we get sort of low on fresh food, and we ate a lot of canned foods and stuff. But they would supply us with fresh food every once in a while. But overall, the food wasn't too bad.
Okay. Did you ever get to correspond with your mom and dad by letters or?
Well, by letter, yes. And they'd be mailed when we'd hit port.
What kind of ports did you hit?
Well, I'm thinking now, most of the ports we hit in the Pacific, most of my duty was in and around the Philippines.
Okay.
Except before we went up there, we did some escort duty between New Guinea and some of the islands around the Philippines. But most of the ports that we hit were in the Manila. I can remember going ashore in Manila a time or two. We did a lot of duty in and around the Philippines.
Okay.
But we didn't get into port very often.
Right. Working around the guns, how loud were they?
Well, they were pretty loud, but I don't think they was loud down where we were, as there's I guess a couple of decks between.
Okay.
But they were pretty loud. Even the 40 millimeters, those were pretty loud too. And the 20s didn't make too much noise.
And then after the ship did its mission, did you head back to the States or?
No, no, I left the ship before it came back to the States.
Okay.
I had enough points, and I got off the ship in Samar, I believe it was, and came back to San Francisco. The ship, I don't recall when the ship came back, but it was later. It was out probably 6 months later.
Okay.
The ship came back. I'm not sure.
How did you get to San Francisco? By another ship or?
Another ship.
Yeah.
Troop transport.
And how did that compare? How does a troop transport compare to a destroyer? I know it's a different mission, different size. But.
Well, I'd say unfavorably. I liked the ship, our ship, better than. There wasn't anything to do coming back. It was pretty crowded, and living conditions were acceptable, but it wasn't a nice ship being on. But on a good ship, you can be comfortable even out in the war. Could be worse.
Did you make a lot of good friends in the Navy?
Yeah, and we corresponded, and especially in the division I was in, the communication division. Some of the radio people I knew quite well.
And what was it like to you when you returned to America and I guess the war was wrapping up, and what was that feeling like for you, knowing that you served?
Well, I don't know that I had any particular feeling. I was glad to get home. I was glad it was over. And, you know, when you're in action, you know that any time it might end. So just to get back and set foot on the good old USA is worth something. So it was good.
Yeah. What anything you want to add about being on the ship or being in the Navy?
No, not in particular. I'm glad I chose the Navy. I like the Navy. At the time I was in the Navy, I would rather have been at home doing something else, but it's something that I felt I owed my country. So, but I don't have any. I have no regrets. In most of the memories I have of the Navy, rather pleasant, excluding, of course, the times that people were shooting at me. I mean, there's nothing pleasant about that. But overall, I would do it again.
Here we are many decades later, and how does it feel today to be a veteran? Knowing, I'm sure you're thanked a lot when I guess if you're identified as a veteran. How does it feel now?
Well, I don't know that I ever really gave that much thought. It's been so long, but I've forgotten very much about the war. There's wars today, but they're different wars. I don't have the same feeling about the wars we have today as I had about World War II. I think World War II was necessary because we were fighting evil. I don't think this country knows today what they are fighting. So overall, I guess I don't. I just don't think too much about being a veteran.
Okay. Well, we're definitely proud of you and your service. And, I've seen a picture of your ship, and I'm sure it was a lot of work at the time and an experience. So we're really proud of you. Do you have anything else you want to add for your interview today?
No, I appreciate what you have done for me. And my experience with the VA has been very pleasant.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being here today.
Well,